Prehistoric era, 300,000 BC to 3000 BC. Our story begins with our earliest human ancestors struggling to survive in a world they barely understood. Around 300,000 years ago, the first anatomically modern humans appeared in Africa. These early Homo sapiens were hunter gatherers, moving with the seasons and following animal migrations. The development of language, perhaps humanity's most important innovation, allowed these early humans to coordinate hunts, share knowledge, and build increasingly complex social structures. We'll never know exactly when humans first began speaking to each other, but this ability to communicate abstract ideas set us apart from other species. Stone tools allowed our ancestors to hunt more effectively and process food more efficiently. The control of fire provided warmth, protection from predators, and the ability to cook food, making more nutrients available and possibly contributing to brain development. The most revolutionary change came around 12,000 years ago with the agricultural revolution. In multiple places around the world, humans independently discovered they could cultivate plants and domesticate animals. This transition from hunting and gathering to farming allowed humans to settle permanently in one place, leading to the first villages and eventually towns. With agriculture came population growth, food surpluses, and the beginning of social hierarchy. Some people could now specialize in crafts, religious practices, or governance rather than food production. But as humans settled down and populations grew, something unprecedented began to emerge along the fertile river valleys of the Middle East, Egypt, India, and China. The first civilizations were about to change everything. Ancient Era, 3000 BC to 500 BC. As the last ice age retreated, humans began building something never seen before: cities. Around 3000 BC, the first true civilization emerged in the fertile river valleys of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, and along China's Yellow River. Perhaps the most transformative innovation of this era was writing. The Sumerians of Mesopotamia developed cuneiform around 3200 BC, initially to keep track of trade goods and taxes. In Egypt, hieroglyphics evolved for similar purposes. These writing systems allowed knowledge to be preserved and transmitted across generations with unprecedented accuracy. With writing came formal legal codes. The Code of Hammurabi, created around 1754 BC in Babylon, stands as one of the earliest written legal systems. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth might sound harsh today, but it actually represented a move towards standardized justice rather than arbitrary punishment. The ancient era saw the first monumental architecture, structures designed to awe and inspire. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built around 2560 BC, remained the tallest human-made structure for nearly 4,000 years. Trade networks expanded dramatically during this period. Mesopotamian merchants traded with the Indus Valley civilization over 2,500 miles away. Egyptian ships sailed the Mediterranean and Red Seas. These connections spread not just goods, but ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. While these ancient civilizations laid the foundations for human society, a new way of thinking was emerging around the Mediterranean and in Asia that would forever change how humans understood themselves and their place in the world. Classical Era, 500 BC to 500 CE. In a relatively small window of time, across different parts of the world, extraordinary thinkers began asking fundamental questions about existence, governance, and the natural world. In Greece, philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle developed systematic approaches to understanding reality through reason rather than myth. Meanwhile, the Greek city-state of Athens experimented with a radical new form of government, democracy, where citizens participated directly in decision-making. The Roman Republic, established around 509 BC, developed a complex constitutional system with checks and balances that would later influence modern democracies. As Rome expanded from a small city-state to control the entire Mediterranean world, it spread its legal system, infrastructure, and Latin language across 3 continents. In China, the Han Dynasty created a sophisticated imperial system that would influence East Asia governance for millennia. The Chinese civil service examination system, selecting officials based on merit rather than birth, was revolutionary for its time. This era witnessed the birth or development of major world religions and philosophical systems that continue to shape human thought. Buddhism emerged in India around the 5th century BC. Confucianism and Taoism developed in China. Judaism evolved, and Christianity appeared in the Roman province of Judea. Scientific and technological advances accelerated. Euclid systemized geometry. Archimedes discovered fundamental principles of physics. The Library of Alexandria became the ancient world's greatest center of learning. But even the mightiest empires couldn't last forever. As Rome fell in the West and China fragmented, a new era would emerge from the ashes of the classical world, one often misunderstood as simply dark. Medieval era, 500 CE to 1400 CE. As the classical empires collapsed, power fragmented across the world, creating a patchwork of kingdoms, caliphates, and feudal states. In Europe, the fall of the Western Roman Empire led to the feudal system, a hierarchical social structure where land was exchanged for military service and protection. Kings granted land to nobles, who in turn provided knights and armies. At the bottom of this period were the peasants who worked the land. The Byzantine Empire, Rome's eastern half, survived for another 1,000 years, preserving classical knowledge and developing a distinct Greek influenced Christian culture. Its capital, Constantinople, stood as the world's most sophisticated city for much of this period. While Europe struggled through its early medieval period, the Islamic world experienced a golden age. Following the rapid expansion of Islam from Arabia in the 7th century, Muslim scholars preserved and built upon Greek, Roman, Persian, and Indian knowledge. Advances in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, chemistry, and engineering flourished in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba. In East Asia, after a period of division, China reunified under the Tang dynasty and later the Song dynasty, developing sophisticated technologies including printing, gunpowder, and the compass. The Mongol Empire, the largest contiguous land empire in history, briefly united much of Eurasia in the 13th century under Genghis Khan and his successors. While initially devastating, the Mongol peace created unprecedented connections between East and West. In the 1400s, the medieval world was changing. In Europe, a rediscovery of classical texts combined with new ways of thinking would spark a cultural revolution that would reshape art, science, and human understanding. Renaissance era, 1400 to 1600. In the crowded streets of Florence, Italy, something remarkable was happening, a rebirth of classical learning that would transform Western civilization. The Renaissance began in the wealthy city-states of northern Italy, where merchants and bankers like the Medici family patronized artists and scholars. This cultural flowering was fueled by the rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman texts, many preserved by Byzantine and Islamic scholars. At the heart of Renaissance thinking was humanism, a focus on human potential and achievement rather than solely on religious concerns. While still deeply Christian, Renaissance thinkers believed that humans could understand and improve the world through reason and study. The art of this period achieved unprecedented realism and emotional depth. Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa and The Last Supper, Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling and David sculpture, and Raphael's harmonious compositions remain iconic masterpieces. Perhaps the most revolutionary technology of the era was Johannes Gutenberg's printing press and movable type, developed around 1440. By making books cheaper and more plentiful, the printing press democratized knowledge and accelerated the spread of new ideas across Europe. The Renaissance coincided with the Age of Exploration, as European ships ventured beyond familiar waters. Christopher Columbus reached the Americas in 1492, Vasco da Gama rounded Africa to reach India in 1498, and Ferdinand Magellan's expedition circumnavigated the globe between 1519 and 1522. As the Renaissance expanded human horizons, a new movement was brewing that would place reason and evidence at the center of human understanding, challenging centuries of political authority. Enlightenment era, 1600 to 1800. What if everything we thought we knew about the world could be questioned, tested, and potentially disproven? This radical idea defined the Age of Enlightenment. Building on Renaissance humanism, the Enlightenment took the next logical step, applying reason not just to art and literature, but to society, government, religion, and the natural world. Nothing was beyond questioning. The scientific revolution laid the groundwork for this intellectual transformation. Galileo Galilei's observations with the telescope confirmed Copernicus's heliocentric theory. Johannes Kepler discovered the laws of planetary motion. Isaac Newton's laws of motion and universal gravitation provided a unified explanation for everything from falling apples to orbiting planets. Enlightenment philosophers applied these principles to human society. John Locke argued that governments should protect people's natural rights to life, liberty, and property, and that political power should come from the consent of the governed. Jean-Jacques Rousseau proposed the concept of the social contract between citizens and their government. These ideas directly influenced revolutionary movements. The American Revolution, 1775 to 1783, established a republic based on Enlightenment principles of liberty, equality, and representative government. The French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, though ultimately more violent and complex, began with similar ideas. The Enlightenment's embrace of reason and science was about to collide with coal, steam, and iron to create a revolution that would transform human society more rapidly than any previous era. Industrial era, 1800 to 1914. Imagine a world transformed in a single lifetime, from horse drawn carriages to automobiles, from candlelight to electric bulbs, from handmade goods to mass production. The Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain around 1760, but accelerated dramatically after 1800, spreading to Western Europe, North America, and eventually around the world. At its heart was a shift from human and animal power to machine power, particularly through the steam engine. Coal powered steam engines transformed manufacturing. Factories could now be located anywhere, not just near water sources or power. The textile industry led the way, with machines like the spinning jenny and power loom multiplying productivity exponentially. Transportation underwent a complete revolution. Railways shrunk distances dramatically. A journey that might have taken weeks could now be completed in hours. Steam powered ships made ocean travel more reliable and eventually much faster. Cities exploded in size as people migrated from rural areas to work in factories. London grew from about a million people in 1800 to over 6.5 million in 1900. This rapid urbanization created enormous challenges: overcrowding, pollution, disease, and poverty. Workers began organizing to improve their conditions. Labor unions fought for better wages, shorter hours, and safer workplaces. Socialist movements gained traction, inspired by Karl Marx's critique of capitalism. The late industrial period saw even more dramatic innovations. Electricity began replacing steam power. The internal combustion engine made automobiles possible. The Wright brothers achieved powered flight in 1903. By 1914, the industrial world had created unprecedented wealth and technological capability, but also new tensions between nations competing for resources and markets. In 1914, these tensions would explode into a conflict that would usher in the bloodiest century in human history. The modern era, 1914 to 1945. The 20th century began with a bang, quite literally, as the assassination of an archduke triggered a chain reaction that would engulf the world in war, not once, but twice. World War I, 1914 to 1918, was unlike any previous conflict. Industrial technology created weapons of unprecedented destructiveness: machine guns, poison gas, tanks, aircraft, and submarines. The result was slaughter on an industrial scale. Over 9 million soldiers died, with millions more wounded or missing. The war redrew the map of Europe and the Middle East. The German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires collapsed, replaced by new nation-states and colonial mandates. In Russia, the war's pressure triggered the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, establishing the world's first communist state. The interwar period saw the rise of mass politics and competing ideologies. Liberal democracy faced challenges from both the left, communism, and the right, fascism and Nazism. The Great Depression, beginning with the US stock market crash of 1929, devastated the global economy and undermined faith in capitalism and democracy. Despite political turmoil, science and technology advanced rapidly. Albert Einstein's theories of relativity revolutionized physics. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin in 1928, beginning the antibiotic revolution in medicine. World War II dwarfed even the First World War in its global reach and destructiveness. The Holocaust, Nazi Germany's systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others, revealed the horrifying potential of modern industrial methods applied to genocide. The war culminated with the United States dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, introducing nuclear weapons to the world and ushering in a new era of existential risk for humanity. As the dust settled on a devastated world in 1945, two superpowers emerged with competing visions for humanity's future. Their rivalry would divide the world and bring it to the brink of nuclear annihilation. Cold War era, 1945 to 1991. For nearly half a decade, the world held its breath as two nuclear-armed superpowers engaged in a global chess match for supremacy. The United States and the Soviet Union, allies during World War II, quickly became adversaries as their competing ideologies, democratic capitalism versus communism, created irreconcilable visions for the post-war world. Winston Churchill captured this division in 1946 when he declared that an Iron Curtain had descended across Europe. Germany became the most visible symbol of this division. The Berlin Wall, constructed in 1961, physically separated East from West Berlin and became the most potent symbol of the Cold War. The most terrifying aspect of the Cold War was the nuclear arms race. By the 60s, both superpowers possessed enough nuclear warheads to destroy human civilization many times over. The tension reached its peak during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, when the world stood at the brink of nuclear war for 13 days. Unable to confront each other directly without risking nuclear apocalypse, the superpowers fought through proxies. the Korean War, 1950 through 1953, the Vietnam War, 1955 through 1975, the Soviet-Afghan War, 1979 through 1989, were all, in different ways, battlegrounds in the larger Cold War struggle. The Cold War extended beyond Earth itself into the space race. The Soviet Union took an early lead by launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, in 1957 and sending Yuri Gagarin, the first human, into space in 1961. The United States responded with the Apollo program, culminating in the 1969 moon landing. By the 1980s, the Soviet system was showing serious strains. When Mikhail Gorbachev became the Soviet leader in 1985, he introduced reforms intended to save the system, but instead accelerated its collapse. By 1989, popular revolution swept across Eastern Europe. The Berlin Wall fell in November, and by 1991, the Soviet Union itself had dissolved. As the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed, a new revolution was already underway, one that would connect humanity in ways never before possible and transform every aspect of daily life. Digital era, 1991 through present. In the early 90s, most people had never heard of the internet. Today, over half the world's population carries more computing power in their pocket than was used to send humans to the moon. The digital era emerged from technologies developed during the Cold War. The internet became with ARPANET, a US Defense Department project designed to maintain communications in case of nuclear attack. Everything changed in '91 when the World Wide Web was made publicly available. Tim Berners-Lee's creation of HTML, HTTP, and URLs created a user-friendly interface for the internet. Suddenly, anyone could publish content and access information from around the world. The 90s saw rapid adaptation of personal computers and internet connectivity in developed countries. Companies like Amazon, founded in '94, eBay '95, and Google '98, established new business models based entirely on digital tech. The mobile revolution began in earnest with the introduction of the iPhone in 2007. Smartphones combined computing, photography, navigation, and communication in a single pocket-sized device. By 2022, over 6.6 billion people, 83% of the world's population, owned a smartphone, making it possibly the most rapidly adopted technology in human history. Social media platforms transformed human interaction. Facebook, 2004, YouTube, 2005, Twitter, 2006, Instagram, 2010, TikTok, 2016, created new ways for people to connect, share, and consume content. Artificial intelligence has advanced dramatically, particularly since 2010. Machine learning algorithms now power everything from search engines to voice assistants to medical diagnostics. The 2022 release of ChatGPT demonstrated AI's ability to generate human-like text, raising both excitement and concern about the future of creative and knowledge work. As we stand at this moment in history, looking back at the journey that brought us here, we might wonder, what era comes next? Will future historians see our time as just the beginning of the digital age, or as a transition to something entirely new? Whatever comes next, understanding our past helps us navigate our future. If you enjoyed this whistle-stop tour through the history of the world as we know it, don't forget to subscribe for more.